Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final group presentation. This is brought to you by Delia Colon, Rochelle Evans, Ignacio Bravo, and Megan Marsico. Introduction about the problem that you're going to see.
Our small group members consist of Ignacio, Megan, Rochelle, and Thalia. Our conflict at hand are issues regarding a supervisory relationship between a newly hired supervisor and a seasoned case manager. The case manager is an experienced Caucasian woman who has been working at the agency for the past 10 years. She had experienced an unforeseen change in her supervisor for a new supervisor without having had enough time for closure or termination. The newly hired supervisor is a Latina ex parole officer who has no prior experience within human services. Being that this was a very new and unfamiliar field for the new supervisor, she prioritized her comfortability and familiarity into her new surroundings, into her new role first, as opposed to engaging with her new coworkers. The experienced case manager was not fond of the new supervisor due to the lack of engagement, with no initial agenda to build relationships with the case manager or the division team as a whole. With this presentation, we will be presenting two different methods that we had chosen, and you will see how we overcome this dilemma. The first is the nonverbal communication, and the second being the common ground.
A couple things to watch out for while you guys are watching the videos. Or a little difference of the group dynamics. We have a individual that's coming into the role as supervisor that's a younger and of color, and then we have another person who has been in the organization and is older and more experienced. So a couple of things to watch out for is the feelings that are presented in the screen that you see in front of you, which is fear, resentment, insecurity, and hopefully we are able to identify those different feelings throughout the video.
Good morning, Ignacio. I'm Thalia. I wanted to stop by and introduce myself.
Oh, well, you're young. I guess we need a more diversity in the workplace. I'm assuming you're just graduating. Do you know the president of the organization, or how did you happen to get this job?
Actually, I graduated a couple years ago, and I have been working as a parole officer for the last several years. I decided to switch careers in order to pursue my drive to help people in my community.
Oh, so you don't even have any experience working in the human services field. So why do they hire you, sweetie? Who do we go to when we have a pregunta?
I'm sorry, I'm not very much appreciating your tone, and I find it to be a little offensive. Did I do something to offend you?
No, not really. I'm just trying to figure out why they switched out the supervisor for someone else who's younger and less experienced. I imagine it's because you're Hispanic and they want to diversify the work environment. We had a good thing going with the previous supervisors, so I'm unsure as to why the change happened.
I'm not sure. I don't think it's something I could discuss, though. Perhaps she just wanted to change of environment, or wanted to move somewhere else, or maybe they thought she would be a better fit in another location since you mentioned she had experience.
I guess, but it still doesn't make any sense why they would replace her with someone, well, someone like you.
I'm not sure what your problem is, but you are being very judgmental and rude towards me. I don't like that you think you are so much better than me just because you have a little experience.
Well, I think you need to get off your high horse, amiga, and show some respect for your elders. I bet you think you were going to come in here and spend your day on Instagram because you're the only person of color, thinking you're going to get that special treatment. Well, guess what? that doesn't happen here.
I am your supervisor and going to request that you give me some respect. You must feel that you can say whatever you want because you have been here for a while and I'm new and much younger.
You can request whatever you like, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get it. I'm sure you're not used to being told no, sweetie, but you have to earn your respect. And as of now, you have not earned it from anyone in the organization. In fact, I don't even think you have been able to engage anyone yet. Just so you know, this morning's meeting was not very good. I'm sure you thought you were being very engaging, but you were kind of all over the place. Sure. I'm sure all the staff were more focused on that. You were still so young and more engaged in trying to figure out who you know since you were able to come in here as a supervisor.
Listen, Ignacio, this is my first day and I don't want to start off on the wrong foot. When I see that you are this upset, I feel that you are expressing yourself in this manner because you need respect and acknowledgement and need to be able to feel safe in your job environment.
Well, it's just that when I see you are so young, inexperienced, and flustered during the morning meeting, I feel that I will struggle because my need to find answers and guidance when I need them will not be met.
I have a need to keep communication open with the people I work with. When I see that you are willing to communicate with me how you truly feel, I feel that we will be able to work together great because my need for open communication is being met. But when someone expresses themselves in an aggressive and judgmental way, I feel hurt because I have a need to be given the opportunity.
Uh, well, uh, now what?
Ignacio, can you tell me what you would like me to do to meet your need of guidance when you need it?
Well, just do what a supervisor is supposed to do.
Hmm. I'm not really sure I do know, but I see that it's really important that this need is met for you. Can you tell me specifically what you would like me to do in order to meet your need?
Uh, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain.
Well, if it's hard for you to explain, can you see how hard it will be for me to understand how to meet that need?
Uh, yeah, I guess. I saw how young you were and felt that no matter what you, no matter what, you would not be able to meet my needs in any way.
I see. I see where you're coming from and how it might seem to see a younger person being the new supervisor. So, what would you like me to do in order to meet your need for proper guidance?
Well, I would like to be able to keep an open line of communication and have the support of someone who knows the resources of the community.
Ignacio, I want you to be very friendly towards me and I want you to give me some time to settle into the new role. And I will do my very best to meet all your needs so the organization can be much more successful. Can we do that?
I think that's something that we can attempt to do. So I just want to say thank you for listening and being understanding.
You're welcome.
So in that video, I hope you were able to identify a couple of the different types of communication when it comes to nonviolent communication. One of them is what's referred to as jackal language, which is identifying different observations with judgment. Um, in the video, we try to demonstrate how the sharing of feelings and emotions, as far as observations go, can help to create a nonviolent type of communication where you're identifying what the observation is and how it makes the individual feel. At the same time, maintaining a respectful tone of voice as well as making clear and present requests, such as when you do this, I feel that. So hopefully you were able to identify a couple of those different techniques to go with the nonviolent communication.
I speak with you in my office for a moment.
Okay.
I have someone from HR to join us today to discuss the issues we have been experiencing. I want to make sure we are addressing this matter appropriately so we can come to a resolution.
Sure. Okay.
So for this conversation, I would like us to try the conflict resolution method. Since you are both social workers, I assume you are familiar with the discussion process.
You might have to explain it again. Some of us are not familiar with techniques like these.
I'm familiar with this technique, thank you.
Great. So I will reiterate the rules really quickly. No name calling, no profane language, and no interruptions while the other person is speaking.
Understood.
Great. Talia, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
I feel that over the course of my time working here as a supervisor, there has been strong feelings of resentment and disrespect. I believe these feelings you are presenting stem from an opposition to my age and race. I sense that you might be of the opinion that you should not have to report to a supervisor that is not only younger than you, but also one of a race you struggle to identify with.
Good. Okay. And Ignacio, what are you hearing when she says this?
Well, what I'm hearing you say is that you get the impression that I don't like you because we have a significant gap in age. You also believe I'm discriminating against you because you are a person of color and I'm not.
Okay, great. And is there anything that you would like to emphasize or point out, Talia?
I would like to emphasize my point regarding the disrespect and feelings of resentment that you must engage with me as your supervisor when you do not think I should be in this role.
Great, good. Okay. Ignacio, now it's your turn.
What I'm hearing you say is that you want me to acknowledge that I do not like that you're my supervisor. And because of that reason, you feel that I did not respect you and resent you.
That is correct.
Good, good. Now it's your turn, Ignacio. You can go ahead and go.
Okay, thank you. Well, I feel that you were selected to be a supervisor due to your race. I feel that due to your age and lack of experience in the human service industry, your race must be the sole reason for you being picked to fill that role. I think that's a little unfair to the other eligible candidates who apply for your position, as they have more experience in this field. So I'm a little upset by the unfairness of the decision, and for that reason, I cannot really truly see you as a supervisor.
Okay. And Talia, what did you hear when Ignacio was saying those things?
What I'm hearing you say is you believe the only reason I was chosen for this position was entirely because of my race. You feel there was someone else more deserving of the title and position. You are angry with this decision and do not respect me because of it.
Okay, very nice. Is there anything you would like to point out or anything that she might be missing, Ignacio?
Well, I would like to emphasize that I am angry that the other eligible candidates were not appropriately considered because they were not a person of color. I believe the selection should be made solely based on experience and not on demographics.
Okay. And Talia, can you please tell me what you heard him say?
Well, what I am hearing Ignacio say is the main reason for you being angry is due to the lack of consideration. The other candidates that were given during the selection process, you only think it was fair to make a decision based on skills and hours spent in this profession.
Yeah, that's my point.
This is good. Both of you are expressing yourselves within the set rules of the technique. Are we good to continue?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Talia, you can go ahead and make the next point.
I feel that I was not given this position solely because of my race. I feel that despite not being as an experienced in social and human services field as you, I was chosen to be a supervisor because of my strong leadership skills. I feel you have allowed pre-established judgments about my race, age, and past profession to overshadow my skills and abilities as a qualified supervisor. I think if you gave me a chance to perform my tasks as a supervisor, your opinion might change.
Good. And Ignacio, can you please tell me what you heard?
So what I'm hearing you say is that you think you were fairly chosen for the position, and that your race had no part to play in your selection. You think, despite not having much experience in social work, you are still qualified to be a supervisor. You think I'm discriminating against you because of these factors. You think I should try and put aside my beliefs and observe your abilities as a supervisor before making a judgment.
Very good. Any additional points you would like to make, Talia?
I would really like to emphasize that I believe these judgments stem from preconceived opinions about my abilities. I believe if you put aside your discriminants, and observed my abilities, you might see me as qualified and deserving on this position.
Great. And please paraphrase what you heard her say, Ignacio.
What I hear you saying is that my judgments come from already established beliefs about your race and age. You think if I watched how you worked in this position, I might see your skills for the job.
Yes, this is my point.
Good. Great. And now it's your turn, Ignacio, again.
So I believe you might be prematurely discrediting the possibility that you were picked for this job because of your race. I believe that you are incapable of seeing your selection for this position as a product of your race. I also believe you lack the ability necessary to be a good supervisor. I feel that you came into this position with little intent to create good relationships with me and other social workers. I feel, in comparison to how things had been before, you have not proven to be a skillful leader.
What I hear you saying is that I am unaware of the pull my race plays on the process of my selection. You also believe I am not intentional with my relationships, and that in comparison to your previous supervisor, I am not a good leader.
Well, I would like to point out that I said in comparison to how things were before, not that I'm comparing you to our previous supervisor.
So just please remember that we don't want to interrupt the other person while they're speaking. So go ahead and continue what you were saying, Talia.
What I hear you saying is that I am unaware of the pull my race plays on the process of my selection. You also believe I am not intentional with my relationships, and that in comparison to the way things were before, I am not a good leader. I also hear you saying this is not in comparison to how the past supervisor performed.
Good. Now, is that correct, Ignacio?
Yeah, that's correct.
I would like to pause here for a moment and just discuss kind of what happened. I understand that the previous supervisor left rather suddenly. Is there a chance that you might be feeling a lack of closure, or and therefore maybe projecting some of your anger somewhat, Ignacio?
I just got used to the way things had been before. We were all a team and have been with each other for over 10 years.
Yeah, and that can be very distressing when our lives change rather suddenly, especially when you're not given the opportunity for closure. However, I do think you have to be open to the possibility of a new relationship with your new supervisor.
I know, I
do not mean to interrupt, but if I may.
Is that okay, Ignacio?
Yeah.
I feel that I could be doing more as a supervisor to connect with our team. Social work is a profession built on a foundation of trust and understanding of how to communicate appropriately. I acknowledge that I came into this position with the same mentality and dynamic that I had at my last job. And while that worked for that position, I understand how it might not fit well in this new role. I feel I need to try harder to build a relationship with each person on this team so that I can be a supervisor that provides the support and encouragement you all need.
That's great. And what are you hearing her say, Ignacio?
What I'm hearing you say is that you acknowledge that you want to put more effort into building relationships with each of us. You know your demeanor suited your last job, but you understand that it does not work in this setting, and you want to change that now in hopes to develop a relationship that is conductive to a positive work environment, conducive to a positive work environment.
Excellent. And is there anything you would like to emphasize, Leah?
No, he understood it exactly how I meant it.
Great. And is there anything you'd like to add, Ignacio?
Yeah, I feel that I appreciate your acknowledgement and your willingness to put forth effort to get to know each of us in a deeper level. I feel that I could try a little harder to accept your efforts and respond in kind. I also feel that in my anger, I have prejudged you and that your abilities unfairly when instead I should have approached you professionally to discuss the matter. I feel I will try harder to express myself to you when I am having these emotional struggles and maintain respect towards you and your position.
Very nice. Can you please tell me what you heard him saying?
What I am hearing you say is that you are grateful for my self-evaluation and desire to build individual relationships with each member of the team. You feel you could try to open up to my attempts to make those relationships happen. I also acknowledge your anger and how it may have played a role in how you responded to me becoming your supervisor. I also hear you saying you will try to be more open in your communication when you are having those feelings of anger while remembering to be respectful.
Great. And Ignacio, is there any points you would like to add or emphasize?
I would like to add that I'm sorry deeply.
Talia, what did you hear him say?
What I am hearing you say is that you are deeply sorry.
I feel both of you did an excellent job at this exercise. I also feel that there's an obvious common goal here to build a positive work environment for everyone on the team. Would you both agree that that's the goal here?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think that this is the first step in the right direction, and I'm hopeful that this will turn out to be a great team in the future. So thank you both for your participation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So that was our take on common ground technique. As you might have saw, there was a couple things that were implemented in order to try to maintain and implement the technique. One of those was to bring in outside source, bring in a third individual that's neutral in the conflict can sometimes help to set some ground rules as well as encourage the positive and respectful talk and maintaining a average amount of time from one person speaking to the other. This can prevent the overwhelming feeling that they're not being able to get their point across. In addition, there's other ground rules that are able to be set, such as not interrupting when the other person is speaking, and as well as the neutral individual being able to give feedback on some of the things that they're saying in case the individual is having a hard time trying to understand what the other person is communicating. Lastly, here we have our final group discussion.
In regards to the techniques we used in our role plays, the issues relating to diversity and oppression. So just referring back to what we had put into our PowerPoint, I talked a little bit in there about, the insecurity between the younger female boss and the older experienced employee. some of those group dynamics, just the resentment, insecurity, there was definitely, I felt some prejudice and some just projection of what one person maybe thought the other person was meaning by some of their behaviors and some of the things that they were saying. Know what everybody else thought.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed a couple things as well. In the beginning of the nonviolent communication, one of the things that I noticed was how the original language between the current employee and the new supervisor was a little aggressive and really aimed towards the age and the background of that individual. It was as if it was more focused on where their ethnicity was coming from and what they looked like and what they thought of them based on their image, instead of giving them the opportunity to kind of present themselves and show and have their work ethic and give that person an opportunity to kind of display who they were actually, and instead of just playing on this stereotype that because they're young they're going to behave a certain way, that because they're young automatically they're inexperienced, fresh out of college, that kind of thing, because they're a person of color, that well, in the role that they thought that because the person was of color that they were automatically going to try to take advantage of that and expect a certain type of treatment because they were the only one that was different from everybody else. Those kind of things kind of play on that, issues relating to diversity, and a little bit of oppression there, just because everything was so judgmental towards that person just because of what they look like before they without even giving them the opportunity to kind of introduce themselves and have their work ethic and their knowledge, kind of show who they really were, past their color and past their age. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt, when I was watching it, especially with the assumption that, in the nonviolent communication, they immediately already made the assumption that they were a certain race. They didn't, they didn't try and get to know the person, or even better, just not assume that the race had anything to play with it. They just made comments that I think in a real world would have actually happened, and really do kind of present how often these very subtle forms of stereotype can come across. And so it was pretty obvious over the course of both videos that there were some very deeply rooted stereotypes and prejudices that kind of gave off a certain tone or gave off a certain opinion from the older white person in the role. So it I think accurately portrayed the struggles that go on in the real world between minorities and and kind of what the common things they have to experience, and how that tone can really change the dynamic of a conversation, can change the way, can cause like a giant power struggle for sure, when that shouldn't be the case, especially between a supervisor and a worker. You should never have the power struggle simply because of race. Now there might be other issues like that they might not agree on, but it should never be something based on race, age, or gender, because those are things that none of us can control. So I think it accurately portrays the diversity and oppression that we see in the real world for sure.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, for me personally, other than everything you guys all just stated, which are brilliant, for me personally, and just because I can relate to this, ageism is actually like a really big thing, and I just feel like that big assumption of like, oh, if you're young, like you don't know much. And granted, no, I don't know as much. And in this case, our like new supervisor didn't know as much in regards to like the human service aspect, but has been very, like experienced in their previous role. But just the assumption was my biggest thing of like their young age being or equating that they lack like the capability of taking on that supervisor role.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
definitely.
presumed a lot about that supervisor.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that was pretty well said. We should move on to the second question.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anybody want to start?
I can take that one. Let me pull that up real quickly. That is okay. So, what techniques were used in the role play? So, with the first video, the nonviolent communication, I think that video did a really accurate job at portraying kind of what we saw in the Rosenberg video with the puppets. I think that it went it was very accurate with the jackal language at the very beginning, where it was very aggressive, very much projecting feelings and perceived actions on the other person, instead of acknowledging that while what you feel can be valid and legitimate, it's what you feel and it's not actually fact. And so I think that was something that over the course of the video really did get clarified, and kind of you got to see the difference between the two. And then with the resolving conflict video, I think that it did a really accurate job at showing not only the very structured dynamic of each person taking a turn to express how they feel, and then it being reiterated on their interpretation. The social worker in that aspect, or the HR rep, it made sense to have them there kind of as a person to delegate, not to use harsh language or not to interrupt in that video. So I think the methods were really accurately portrayed in both videos for their techniques.
Yeah, I think you kind of covered a lot of the different techniques that were used in the role play. As far as the use of jackal language and how to avoiding all that. But I think what really kind of was a great technique was to have that third person come in when in coming to common ground, where the two people are having a conflict, and you bring a third party in that's neutral and wants the best for both. I think that was a great technique, because then at that point, that person is in charge of allowing each person to kind of prove or share their points and share their feelings and so on, while they're just kind of there to kind of play the middle person that has nothing to win from one person or the other person winning the conflict, instead of just finding and understanding and finding common ground to kind of find a solution to the problem.
Yeah.
I agree. I really liked the idea of bringing the third person in. I think it gives you sort of that grounding person that is non-emotional in the situation and is able to stay impartial. Yeah, impartial, and sort of keep the conversation on topic. Because I mean, anybody that's been in a situation where things kind of get, emotions get involved, and people get off on tangents, and I think it's really hard to stay on task, even if we have the best of intentions and we understand. And I think with that one, with the common ground, he had said, I'm not very familiar with this technique, so I like that they took the time in the video to explain how the technique worked and walk through it. I also liked in the first technique, the nonviolent communication, how it was pretty obvious the steps of nonviolent communication, that observing without evaluation, and then noticing the emotions, recognizing the needs, and then making very clear requests was pretty apparent in the video to me.
Yeah, I think we also kind of began to mention a little bit about how techniques were used in the role play, and I don't mean to skip you, Talia. Is there anything else you wanted to add for question 2?
No.
Because we kind of began to transition into to question 3, how the techniques were used in the role play. So we saw in nonviolent communication some of the techniques that were used in there really focus on what were considered the four components of nonviolent communication, which is the observation or the avoiding the use of jackal language. So later on into the video, we see that they transition from attacking one another into sharing the observations that they're making using the language of when I see that in reference to when the previous employee is talking to the new supervisor and saying, when I see that you're so young, I don't feel like I can go to you for guidance. So in that moment we kind of see the use of the techniques in the role play as bringing in the component of observation and feeling, because they're talking about when I see that blank, I feel blank. And then moving forward, and sharing the kind of the different needs that they have for that need to be met by the other people. So we have the employee that's sharing that they have their need for supervision and for guidance that their word will not be met. And then we kind of see them transition into conversating about, what can they do? What are they willing to do in order to come to an agreement? And that's kind of how we can see the technique being used in this role play.
I think for me, with that role play and specifically, it was really amazing to me to see how the supervisor could make the employee very self-aware of their own emotions, because in the script you could tell how there were times that the supervisor would make a great point that would cause the case manager to be very reflective of their own emotions, and I think that supervisor did a really good job, whereas oftentimes people get really offended and not trying to work things out with people. I think the supervisor did a really good job at that and helping the case manager improve their emotional intelligence, maybe be self-aware, monitor themselves, all that good jazz.
I agree. So how would y'all say, what stages would y'all say for each one they've finished in to kind of wrap it up, and what signs did those give? What signs were obvious?
Yeah, I think definitely for the role of nonviolent communication, I think they definitely finished, and I would say somewhere in stage one, maybe stage 1.5, if there is such a stage. At that point, they're still measuring each other up, seeing who's going to take the leadership role, who is going to have authority, and so on and so forth. So they're past, the pre-stage, before stage one, where they're just random people. At this point, they've introduced each other. They have had a verbal communication with one another, and they're kind of trying to measure each other up. And I think by the end of the conversation, the new supervisor definitely establishes that role, that they are here to take on the role of supervisor and be the leader and be the authoritative in the organization or in that workplace. So I think for the nonviolent communication aspect of the or the nonviolent communication role play, I would say they definitely finished in stage one, maybe stage 1.5, because they're beginning to move into the next stage.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel that way too with the resolving conflict one. I think that especially towards the end, when they start trying to not necessarily finish each other's sentences, but try to meet definitely that common ground, and fill in the gaps where maybe the worker didn't feel comfortable expressing their emotions. I think that definitely gave a sign of stepping into a stage where it may not be buddy or super close friendship, but it's at least you can tell it's making it towards that direction. So for sure, stage one, there obviously was a lot of conflict between the two, so you kind of pass through that second and third stage. So I would say it is in a soft stage 4, if I had to label it, because I don't think they're going to go out and have sleepovers together, but I think that it's getting to that point of finding a mutual friendship, or at least a friendly acquaintance.
Well, guys, that's it for our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were able to identify some of the same things that we noticed during the video. We look forward to watching your videos, and thank you for watching.